Philadelphia Eagles training camp is finally upon us. We are back underway, and there is so much to talk about from that opening day. We've seen a secondary shakeup. We've got a surprise arrival in the way of Jihad Campbell, and there is so much more in the way of injury updates, potential roster battles, and a hidden gem who broke out and turned some heads that even I wasn't expecting. So we're going to go all of that and so much more in today's episode of The Outside Insider as officially our training camp recap shows get underway. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Outside Insider. We are just now what feels like moments away from the sound of clashing pads down at the NovaCare complex. We're back in action. The Eagles have reported for their first day of training camp, and there is a ton to get through. So today's show is going to be us just slowly walking through all of that, dissecting what we've heard from down at the complex today from the beat writers in attendance and trying to make some sense of some of the stuff that came out, because there's a lot of interesting tidbits that have come out from that opening day. What's up, Zach? Nice to see you in the chat, as hopefully every Birds fan is fired up on this lovely Wednesday evening. So before we get to anything else, the first thing that obviously came out was the injury report, and the good news was for Eagles fans that it was mainly a clean bill of health. Howie and Nick Sirianni attended a press conference in the morning and would be on record essentially saying that they've got a clean bill of health, a full attendance for the opening day of camp, but it didn't mean that everyone practiced. There were two players that missed the opening day's practice. They were both Jalen Carter and Kenyon Green. Now, Carter, interestingly, missed some time in the spring. I think he actually missed the final practice of the OTA period in the spring. So that's certainly something worth noting. But Kenyon Green, I think, for me, is the more tricky one, the more murky one to go through there, purely because he was obviously brought in as a backup as part of that Chauncey Gardner-Johnson trade, and now finds himself in a spot where, realistically, he's the insurance policy behind Tyler Steen at right guard, a player we haven't really seen take that next ascension in the same way we saw Cam Jurgens do, in the same way we saw Landon Dickerson do. Of the three guys that came in, those like two draft classes of Stoutland University, all of them have graduated apart from Tyler Steen. He was originally positioned to be a backup center, then got moved to guard, was meant to win the right guard job last year. That didn't work out, and now he's running for it again. So with Kenyon Green out, it does afford him an opportunity to hit the ground running, to turn some heads, and to show the progress that he's made. That's really important for Tyler Steen. But ideally, you'd like to have the veteran backup, the former first-round pick, just in there as soon as you can, like as soon as humanly possible, get boots on the ground, and just iron sharpens iron. That has been the mantra of Stoutland University for quite some time now. I can't imagine that changing anytime soon. So hopefully, it's just a minor setback. There was nothing majorly mentioned about him in the presses. I'm sure if it was something substantial, then it would have been. But yeah, ideally, you'd like to see Kenyon Green out there. Can we talk about how much weight Jordan Davis has lost because the league needs to be on watch? This, honestly, Zach, is like a comment that I see like every year for the past three, I think, now with Davis. Like after that rookie year where a lot of people were tough on him, the next year he came out looking a little bit leaner. And then obviously last year, a little bit leaner again. It feels like this is almost by design for the Eagles at this point. Like maybe that this nose tackle role in Fangio's defense isn't quite as coveted as maybe we thought it would be. Like we saw just how much damage Jalen Carter did last year because of the presence of Jordan Davis. We saw Nolan Smith break out. We saw Jalix Hunt turn a few heads. And I wonder if maybe they're thinking, do you know what? We've lost Milton Williams. And yes, we've added some, interesting depth pieces like Ty Robinson, but we could do with a more threatening interior pass rusher, because it's going to get to a point where maybe, just maybe, Jalen Carter gets double teamed a little bit too much and those windows start to close. So if they've asked him to trim some fat, if they've asked him to, get in the gym and just get that cardio going to be a little bit more explosive off the snap, then I'm all for it. And I think you're right. Like he could be an absolute menace if this comes to fruition. So if you can get a 1-2 punch where Davis can be, because the thing is, there's a run stuffer. I think Jordan Davis is incredibly underrated. Like arguably one of the most underrated defensive tackles in the league, in my opinion. But as a pass rusher, like that has never been his forte. It's what he often gets judged by. So if we can see him now really start to take that next step, he knows as well, bear in mind, that this is a big year for him. Like he got his option picked up. He's set for 2025 at least. But he knows that there is a contract payday coming to Jalen Carter. That is unquestioned. He knows Nolan Smith is on the cusp of a payday. That is unquestioned. There's a lot of money that's going to get thrown around that defensive front. And if Davis wants to make sure he's getting a slice of the pie, he has to be on his A game. And if that means maybe adding some pass rush moves to his repertoire, whether it's shedding some weight, improving that he can be of immense value to that pass rush unit, then I think that is absolutely a good thing. So that is something to be worth noting. I think like we'll see it maybe more, I would say preseason, but I don't think the likelihood is he's going to play much in the preseason. But I think as time goes on, specifically like week 1, 2, and 3, how he's being used, how his stats look, is he starting to be a real disruptor in the pass game? Is going to say a lot for sure about what his usage is going to be over the next year. Philly, Matt, nice to see you go Birds and Phils and Bird Brain. Of course, wouldn't miss a stream. What a man he is. Evening all, he says, and evening to everyone watching. The other two names on the injury report who were limited today. The first was Cam Jurgens, who was out with a back setback, if you will. Doesn't sound, as far as I can say, again, anything serious for any of the guys on the injury report today. But we did see a little bit of movement on that offensive line. Essentially, Drew Kendall is taking the backup reps for Cam Jurgens now, which he got drafted as a guard. So a lot of people are expecting him to be left guard, right guard, potential backup, swing player. And Brett Toth was the backup center. Now, that appears to have changed. So Brett Toth, who has been on this Eagles roster for what feels like forever, is now over to left guard. And we now see a rookie in Drew Kendall getting some snaps at center. So with Jurgens potentially limited for the time being, that's intriguing. I think it's nice to see what you have in a rookie. What's he capable of? Like, they haven't really answered that question of getting a viable backup center to Jurgens, which it's not the end of the world. I mean, look how long they went without a really viable backup at center to Jason Kelce. But if you can get someone that is familiar, like just get as many guys familiar with as many positions as you can, especially the guards. If you can get guards rotating in and out, it will just be of so much value as time goes on. So that was one name. And the second name, of course, was none other than Jihad Campbell. So the rookie, the first round pick, is essentially making his way downtown into Philadelphia to make his Philadelphia debut. So was in a limited capacity. He wasn't wearing pads or like doing any 7-on-7 or 11-on-11 drills or anything like that. But team drills and workouts and that sort of thing, he was present, which already is a huge vote of confidence. Because if you go back to the draft and remember, I don't know. I think it's hard to say, isn't it? But this is a top 10 player. This is a top 10 player on so many boards, and he fell all the way down within snatching distance for Howie Roseman. And the only reason anyone could come up with was the injury concerns. And I don't think they were particularly that prevalent. I mean, I don't know the player. Like, I don't know the full injury history. I wasn't on the Alabama coaching staff. But I just can't imagine that being enough. So to know that he's ready to go for camp, it's huge for the Eagles, because if that was somehow the only concern and that scared off, 15, 16 other teams, then fair enough. You know, like, oh no, what a shame. And the Eagles have just got themselves a potentially generational linebacker for next to nothing, really, in terms of what he should have cost. So seeing Campbell on the field is great. It's going to be really fun to see him, you know, in the future training camp practices once the pads go on, once everything kicks into a really high gear. And of course, through preseason. Like, is he going to get exposure in preseason? Does he come out as a starter? There is a little bit of uncertainty at that linebacker group, and that's mainly, honestly, just because one of the players who absolutely wasn't at training camp today, and the only one, was Nakobe Dean. So, as expected, Nakobe Dean opens up training camp on the physically unable to perform list. Now, the perk of doing this for the Eagles is that he doesn't actually take up a roster spot. So he doesn't cost them anything to keep around, and they can activate him whenever they want. So they could go 2 weeks, 3 weeks into this program, then bring him up. They don't have to cut anyone in a corresponding move or anything like that. Really nice spot for him to be. But for Nakobe, this is a big year. And we spoke about it a lot on the show. I'm sure you've read a billion articles about it. But contract year for a linebacker that has had injury setbacks, that has had one breakout year, and that was cut short against Green Bay with that torn patella tendon. this is a big moment for him. Like, especially now with Jahad Campbell on the scene, especially with the way that Zach Bourne got paid, and especially with how much money is going to have to go to guys like Carter, to guys like Jordan Davis, Nolan Smith. Like, is he just out of the picture? Not only is he playing for his Philadelphia future, but he's playing for all of the marbles right now, like in terms of his NFL career. So that's going to absolutely be something to watch over the course of the summer. Like, when can Nakobe Dean get back on the field? There were reports a few months ago that they're not expecting him back in time for the first week of the season. I'd like to think that will change, but again, it's so early to say. So all the best to Nakobe. I hope he does get back on the field soon, because that will just give the Eagles one hell of a linebacker picture. But of course, one man who is going to absolutely benefit from the fact that Campbell isn't quite there yet and Nakobe is on PUP is Jeremiah Trotter Jr. Now, I've been on record of when they drafted him, I didn't rate him as highly as other people, certainly with some saying he was a second-round pick. I think he did genuinely impress me towards the end of last season when he started being dropped into these defensive situations. Now he's got a full spring. He's got a full summer with no competition around him. Like, there is no one to steal stats from. There's no one to demote him to the second or the third team for the time being. It's a free reign for him to show how far he's developed, to prove his worth, and to try and fight for a starting role. And to be honest, it's up for grabs, because there's going to be maybe 3-4 linebackers that see the field on a regular basis in this defense. You know that Zach Bourne is categorically one of them. You can assume that Jahad Campbell, when healthy, is going to be the second. That leaves Nakobe Dean, who's coming off a big injury, and Jeremiah Trotter Jr., who has developed quite nicely over the last 12 months. So for Trotter, this is a huge, huge moment. It's a huge couple of weeks before Jahad Campbell fully settles in, before we see the potential return of Nakobe Dean, to stamp his authority on this defense, to hit a few, big tackles, a couple of big thuds in practice, and to turn a few heads, especially with preseason. He is absolutely one of the X factors we want to watch out for. But immediately got some reps with the ones today. We love to see that, and hopefully that can lead to some more opportunities for him down the line. Moving on, though, there's a couple of other storylines from today. One of them, I think, let's get to the most prominent one, the big one, okay? Because it all lies around the secondary, and we'll start with the one that brings me great joy to talk about, which is that when the 11-on-11 drills went on for the first time, the safeties lined up on the field, and believe it or not, Cooper DeJean was lined up at safety. And I remember, I've said this for as long as I can remember, about when he first came when he first came to the Eagles and he was injured, that Fangio was on the record saying they don't want to overcomplicate it. They're going to keep him in the nickel, which implied that the plan was to have him at safety. And this was a guy at Iowa that did do it all and did his best work, arguably, there. He then has an incredible rookie campaign and makes an insurmountable impact. Like, the game he came back added so much versatility to that defense as someone that could rush the passer on a blitz, could play nickel really well, could drop back into the secondary. Like, he added so much to so many other people on this defense. And it felt like, at the time, the natural progression was to move to safety. Now, after the Super Bowl, I remember saying on a stream that I think that's the logical move, and it was understandably shot down in flames, because you've got yourself a brilliant nickel corner. You don't want to mess with that whatsoever. And then the Eagles went and drafted Andrew Makuba in the second round. But the thing is, with that safety position, that the depth is just not quite there, and there will be times, like, inevitably, the Eagles want to play 3 safeties in some capacity, be it this honey badger-esque sort of role, or like the old LSU type safety role where you've got someone just roaming around quite freely. Malcolm Jenkins did it for a bit in Philadelphia, of course. Or if it is just going to be as this third overhang safety, there's going to be windows for him. And outside of Reed Blankenship, who is a proven commodity, it's Sidney Brown, who, again, injuries, hasn't quite lived up to that. There have been flashes from Sidney Brown. We've certainly not seen enough to be fully confident that he's worthy of a starting role. Then it's Andrew Makuba. And beyond that, it's guys like Lewis Sine. There just aren't many safeties in that backfield that you can reliably start next to Reed. Cooper arguably is the most accomplished safety that they have next to Reed Blankenship. So if you can find a way to get him, and I'm not saying full-time, I don't think this will be a full-time move for him, but if you can have sets where you've got Reed Blankenship and Cooper DeJean at safety, you've got Makuba, who's a little bit more physical, a little bit tougher, a little bit more harder hitting, very secure as a tackler. If you can have him like just in that intermediate area, almost as the extra linebacker. I think that is going to account for a lot. And it just feels like Fangio is playing around to see how does he fare? Like, is he ready for a full-time safety role? Does this benefit us? Because then if he does go to safety full-time, you've then got to think about who would then move to nickel corner. Is it going to be a veteran like Parry Nickerson? Are you going to risk Mac McWilliams, who I know some people are high on? One of our writers, David Nees, absolutely loves him. And judging off my film room that I did on a stream with you guys, like I was never really sold on his ability. It felt like he was more of a logical safety than a cornerback. But alas, I'm not a coach. I think that he was very tightly hipped. His technique was a little bit raw. He has incredible speed, really good click and close ability. And I think that would just work better from that kind of top line of defense. So I would prefer to see that. However, with someone as versatile, with someone as valuable as Cooper DeJean, like, why not just have him at safety for a couple plays? Because if you can have him on, like, for instance, a free safety blitz or something like that, the fear that would impose, I think, to opposing offenses is so great. Like, you don't have to have him full time at safety, which I think is where a lot of people's minds go, that, oh, DeJean's taking snaps at safety, therefore he's going to be playing there full time. Like, it doesn't have to be that way. You can have him as a nickel corner and then on a safety blitz recognize that he is the most explosive safety they have. He's got a knack for rushing the passer anyway. He navigates through traffic really well. He's really good at scraping offensive lines and finding the ball carrier. I think that having him just in those pinch situations where you want to do something a little bit outside of the box, if you pardon the pun, with a safety, he's perfect for it. He's absolutely perfect for it. And you've now got a 4-week run of training camp where you can get him in that backfield, move him around a little bit. Hell, try him on the boundary. Why not? Try him opposite Quinion Mitchell for a couple plays. Let him man up against someone like A.J. Brown, who is a lot tougher, a lot bigger, and see how he fares. And just go, all right, well, hypothetically, when it's week 7, do we just move him out there for a bit? And then we can have Makuba as the overhang. And then we can have Nickerson in the nickel, or you can have Matt McWilliams or whoever. But just the sheer versatility that he brings. We know Vic Fangio likes to move players around. And those seeds were planted long ago before he even arrived. When you can go back to the Jonathan Gannon era and look at how guys like Fletcher Cox were complaining about having to drop into coverage, and guys were, confused a lot of the time on assignments. It led to a little bit of bickering. This is the cleanest version of this defense because it is Fangio's defense. And now you've got the personnel up front to move around. You've got linebackers that can do it all. The off-ball linebackers are performing at an outworldly level. What can you do in the defensive backfield? You've got a bona fide star at cornerback in Quinion Mitchell. You've got a brilliant nickel corner in Cooper DeJean. The safety spot is a little bit uncertain. Just move him around. Just have him as this free roaming player that can hurt you on a blitz, can man up against the nickel corner, can man up against the running back, can man up against a fullback if teams want to deploy that. Or they can hang back and, cover tight ends or whatever it is they ask him to do. But just seeing where he's at ability-wise to do all of those things will be the best thing for his development. It will be the best thing for this defense, and it will be the best thing for Vic Fangio. Now, in the reality of a game week, like, I can just see it being DeJean in the nickel, Makuba and Blankenship as he's starting to safeties, and that kind of being the end of it. But there will be times where I think you will see either that third safety or the box safety or that honey badger-esque role that would be filled by DeJean. I think that's too good. It's too powerful to have. Like, it's useless implementing it if you don't have a player with the requisite traits, and DeJean has all of them in abundance. So I'm all for it. I've been salivating at the bit to see DeJean at safety, to see him move around this defense, since the end of last season. I'm sure many of you guys will remember that, but I can't wait. I think that's going to be a really fun storyline to watch develop and just see how he fares, and more importantly, how Makuba fares, because this doesn't work without the trust of those other players, right? Like, if Makuba's struggling, if Sidney Brown is struggling, if there's no real other players outside of, like, again, Lewis Sign or someone like that, you're going to have to run with DeJean at safety because you've got more optionality at nickel, I think, than safety in terms of the depth chart. But if the safeties are good and they're, confident and they're playing well in training camp and they're developing nicely, then there maybe isn't as much of a need to fix what isn't broken, if that makes sense. That you haven't got to go and reinvent the wheel. You've got a defense that ranked very well last year. However, there is something really, really exciting about the idea of just Cooper DeJean marauding defensive backfields, knowing that this is a guy that can upend Derrick Henry. This is a guy that can take on tight ends, that can man up against anyone on offense, be it slot receivers, running backs, tight ends, wide outs. It doesn't matter. He can do it all. And he can play zone coverage well. Oh, and he's incredibly explosive off the snap. He can blitz. Like, he can do everything. Like, you'd be silly not to fully utilize that. And I think that Vic Fangio just dipping his toes into those waters to experiment a little bit is super exciting. Birdbrain says the problem with DeJean as a full-time nickel is he's going to have to come off the field at some point when we're in base defense. Move him to safety means he never leaves the field on those occasions. Which, again, I think is a very, very good point. Very good point. And if you can keep your best players on the field, that's all a coach ever really wants to do. And again, like, if you're talking about at the minute him playing nickel and you take off Makuba and you bring on Sidney Brown, are you comfortable with Sidney Brown being back there? Is his skill set like a little too similar to Reed Blankenship? I think the two are very similar players in terms of what they do. We just haven't seen enough proof in the pudding from Sidney Brown yet. Blankenship, I think, is done excellently to not only carve out a starting role, but to make it his and make it so unchallenged that you can trade Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and not even think twice about, needing to add another key safety or another veteran player in there. They're happy with Reed to be that guy and then to allow someone like Makuba to develop. However, again, if Makuba comes off the field, it's Sidney Brown the guy yet? I don't think he is. Like, Reed will be the only one you could trust there in cover 1 or cover 3, and they don't run that too often to where you would have to bring up the second safety. So, yeah, I think that will be the better option. Like, if you were to take out Makuba, you were to take out Brown, you slide DeJean up to safety for a couple of snaps, and then you bring in Mac McWilliams, Parry Nickerson, whoever it might be, just to take those off kind of nickel snaps. Or even better, like an extra linebacker. Like, you've got guys like Jalix Hunt, who we will get to in a little bit, who has already proven he can range side to side as good as anybody in this league. His athletic traits are absolutely off the chart and was able to prove his worth off the edge as a passer, a little bit as an off-ball linebacker, but we didn't see it too much. But I do think that there is upside for him to play that hybrid role because he's not the biggest guy in the world. He is a little bit leaner. He's sort of like the Milton Williams of linebackers, a little bit leaner, a little bit smaller, still hits hard and just moves absolutely rapidly. So that could be an option as well. Like, I think you've got so much optionality underneath with, you could even drop edge guys outside horizontally to cover flats and that sort of thing, and just have DeJean over the top in those instances, rather than take your safety off the field and leave just this glaring red hole, which would be the only one on the defense, right? Like, which is, I'm sure, is what Birdbrain's alluding to. If you take off whoever that starting second safety is, it just is going to open up a lot of traffic over the middle for quarterbacks to get aggressive, because you don't want to target Quinion. You don't want to target whoever the CB2 is, and we'll get to that shortly as well, because that's the other part contingent on this conversation. And underneath, you've got a great defensive line. The linebackers are terrifying. The only spot you can target is that second safety spot. And if one of your best players just happens to slide up there for the moments where the one weak point on the defense goes out and that position gets stronger somehow for 30 seconds, then it eradicates that entirely. So, yeah, DeJean to safety, I think, is a very, very good decision. Not full-time, but certainly in those little pockets where they want a bit of extra juice or try something different. Or like Birdbrain says, when they do need to rotate players out, he's just someone that can do it all, has done it all, will do a lot more, and you're not going to have that concern. Like, there is no grave concern with DeJean starting over the top there. What's up, Dirk? Nice to see you again. A quick apology, since Duck's here now, we've got all the boys together, for the lack of streams. Last week was a pretty big one for PSN. There's some stuff coming that I'm sure we'll unveil very, very soon over the next couple of weeks. It's just been, I'm assuming fact, you might have even seen it where there was an article on Metro Philadelphia, but it has been acquired by a new company. And so we're still kind of finalizing details on what that looks like, what's next for us, how we just grow moving forward, and how we can, continue to improve the platform. So there'll be a lot of fun stuff with that. And then just my life got absolutely chaotic for a hot minute. So I apologize for the lack of streams, but with training camp, couldn't afford to be away for too long. And talking of being away for too long, as we smoothly segue into another conversation, Keely Ringo, I don't think he's that far away from a starting role. The other key battle in this secondary this evening. So hang on, before we get to a key battle, there's a battle between me and Timor because he's going to come in yapping, isn't he? I heard Liam skip streams because the Phillies lost their series to the Giants. I mean, he was right about that. He was right about that. Not right about skipping the streams. I mean, I wasn't down that bad because of the Phillies, but it was just frustrating to know that you were right more than anything else. I don't know. I think Vic's trying to create a positionless secondary. I will be all for that as well, though. I think that would be saucy. I'm all for it. Like, just get an absolutely as chaotic as humanly possible back there. But one of the other players, as we said, like involved in that conversation is Keely Ringo. So coming into training camp, the Eagles lost Darius Slay. I would have said they lost James Bradbury as well, but that didn't really count as a loss to anything, which meant that the position battle for CB2 was between Keely Ringo, who's now in year number 3, and of course the 8-year veteran Adoree Jackson, formerly of the Giants, formerly of the Titans, guard at USC that I was a big fan of. That felt like the ultimate pinch move to get a cheap, high-performing veteran that's familiar with the division, that's familiar with the players, to potentially, bridge the gap if needed until they can draft another corner or sign another corner. Or also just be an insurance policy for if Keely Ringo's ready now, but maybe struggles or doesn't pan out. But coming into training camp, we weren't really sure who would have the upper hand straight away. Like, where would the Eagles put that trust off the jump, and then which player would they make kind of chase the tail? And Keely Ringo was the first one to actually get starting reps today on both 7-on-7 and 11-on-11. So Ringo, the Georgia product, he honestly, and this is very weird to say, I understand that, with Quinion Mitchell on the roster, with Cooper DeJean on the roster, might be my favorite cornerback to watch on the roster from just what we've seen over the course of his sporadic defensive appearances and the 2 preseasons that he's had. There is something about it. He's just got this really great blend of size and speed and twitchiness and fluidity. Like, he's just a joy to watch play the position. Dinner cornerback, will fight the ball to hell or high water, tackles pretty securely, but just watching him in motion, watching him able to flip his hips, like he gets it so well. And it's often, that you have these taller corners that struggle a little bit because of the extra mass and the extra size. He doesn't seem to have that. Like, he moves like he's a nickel corner at 5'10", 5'11". So I'm a big Keely Ringo fan, and I really, really hope he does, win this position battle this year. But what the annoying thing was that he did give up a touchdown pass to AJ Brown, and he did give up a pass to Terrace Marshall. The less said about Marshall, in my opinion, the better. But we're going to have to talk about him today because AJ Brown gassed him up, which means I am now in a bind of having to talk positively about a player that I openly slagged off for the first 5 years of his existence in the NFL. But yeah, I think, like, for me, Keely Ringo should win that CB2 role. It's too early to say. And realistically, if he struggles, they are going to look at Adoree Jackson, which is such a good spot to be in. Like, worst case scenario, the guy that you're trying to allow to develop and to grow into this new role doesn't quite hit that mark. And you've got the insurance policy of a proven 8-year veteran that has started for the majority of those years on a variety of defenses. And I think that's such a good player to have just in your back pocket. Sort of like if James Bradbury, if he was competent for the final year of his contract, But yeah, I think for me, Keely Ringo is such a unique corner in terms of what he brings to the table. I would love to see him break out this summer. And I noted in my training camp recap today that the best thing about being a corner in this Eagles team is that the players you're going up against are seemingly just the best in the NFL. Like, is there a better receiving tandem than AJ Brown and Devontae Smith? Probably not. When you sprinkle in the speed of Jahan Dotson, just to add that challenge, when you sprinkle in the brilliance of Aeneas Smith, I'm kidding, or Terrace Marshall, like all of these guys that can add something a little bit different, you're being tested every day. You're not going up against rookies and 4th-round picks and 8-year veterans that had 300 yards receiving last year, other than Terrace Marshall. And you're playing against perennial Pro Bowlers. So to lose a rep to AJ Brown, doesn't faze me. I think that is the best thing possible for his development. The only way he's going to get better is practicing against these great, great players. And he gets to do that on a daily basis, which is, for me, amazing. But we'll see how that positional battle shakes out as we head towards preseason. Obviously, we've got a few more practices this week, so we'll get some hopeful more insights into that. But yeah, just a really interesting way to start training camp for Keely Ringo, I think, to be given that trust off the jump and not be made to earn it. Or I think especially just given that he's been kind of shafted in a way where he was brought in mid-round pick. You're not going to start ahead of Darius Slay. You're not going to start with Maddox. You're not going to start ahead of Bradbury. Then the next year it's the Quignon year, and you're not going to start there. And then Cooper gets brought in, so you're not going to start in the nickel, and you're not going to start outside with Darius Slay as well. And now it's year 3. You finally get your chance. And if they'd have put Adore Jackson above him again, I think it just would have been a little bit risky for the mindset. I think to just know that like every year you've just had the rug pulled slightly or a glass ceiling above your head. Now he can go out and earn it. Now he can really, really go out and earn it. And I'm all for seeing him just go out and just day by day get a little bit better. You know, have a couple of good reps against Smitty. Get us some videotape of him against AJ Brown. You've got two very different styles of receivers there. One of them is a possession player on the ball. He's like 6'3". He's massive. He's built like a transformer and just dominates the route. And then you've got the other one who will break your ankle in a heartbeat at the slightest misstep. You're going to get good. Like, you're going to get better just by playing against these guys every week. So, yeah, I'm excited to see Keely Ringo's development. And I like the fact that the Eagles gave him that opportunity without making him earn it behind another veteran corner again, because I think he's past that now. He's certainly at a level where he's good enough to at least be, you know, the primary backup, but I think he's good enough to start. So only time will tell. Duck says Ringo has a physicality and just needs the snaps, and I completely agree. I think it's a case of like the game slowing down is going to be the big thing, right? And the more you have in the league, the more experience you have, the more exposure you get to different scenarios, because it's not just the game slowing, but it's going to be the pressure. It's going to be those pinch 2-minute drives. It's especially in this defense, the changes of assignments and stuff. So there's a lot to cook up there, but I'm sure he's going to get there. And I have full faith. I think he is one of my key players to watch this summer, and I'm just excited for it. Like, he's the one player I've had circled in red every offseason since he's arrived, hoping he's got it in the bag. Timor says, surely getting cooked by Terrace Marshall Jr. Means you get sent to the CFL for 6 months. Don't do Ringo like that, please. Come on. I'm dreading this training camp just purely because of Terrace Marshall, because it's already happened where a former PSN writer has tagged me in one tweet that he made one catch. Like, I'm not doing this. I cannot. Like, I mean, AJ Brown gave him a really good nod of approval, I think, today. Like, sat down in a presser, told the world that he's going to make the room uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable watching him on tape, okay? I'm hoping that changes and I get uncomfortable because of how wrong I am. Like, that is the aim for me this training camp, is I want to be wrong about Terrace Marshall, because I didn't rate him coming out of college. I thought he was incredibly overhyped. I didn't see what the world was selling me on. And he hasn't really done much in the NFL. He has sustained a career there, which is more than can be said for others. It's hard to do. He's a proven veteran. He's a good guy to have around the locker room. I get it. I just hope I'm wrong. He's the one player, like, of all the players I want to be proven wrong on, he's the main one. Like, I really, like, because it was him and like Denzel Mims was the other, and I never wanted to be proven right more than with Denzel Mims, and then luckily I was, because his attitude absolutely reeked. But as a player, I would like to see Terrace Marshall improve so I can hold my hands up in week 5 after he's had, you know, what? I think my mic's back. Don't know what happened there. Apologies. What has gone on there? I don't know. Something has gone a bit dodgy. No. Oh, there we go. Right, we're back. Yeah, I want to be proven wrong. I want to see what he can do, and just hold my hands up and say, do you know what? Fair enough. He just scored a game-winning touchdown in week 6. I'm really happy they brought him on. I was wrong to discredit him and, you know, just assume that he wouldn't develop over the course of his NFL career, which he hasn't. But you know what I mean. So, yeah, Bearbrain's made a good point. Look, I was very wrong about John Hightower, and I'll probably be wrong about Aeneas Smith as well, but alas. Yeah, I mean, in fairness, I think Marshall's game lends itself to the NFL a bit more. Like, John Hightower was very much had it. He just is Aeneas Smith, isn't he? Like, for me, that is just the example of trying to find your X in someone else. Like, I love Smith because he reminds me of John Hightower, because he's so elusive and he's so quick, but he does too much. Whereas Hightower just he couldn't catch a ball for ages, and yeah, let's not bring up past trauma, okay? But yeah, like, I think Marshall is just a bit more solid, bit more reliable. Doesn't do anything overly explosive, but can catch balls, which is what you need a receiver to do. And as a possession receiver over the middle, someone that can work in the slot, that's a little bit bigger. Like we've spoken for years now about the Eagles wanting to, have this big slot mentality to find this guy to come in and just be almost like another tight end. Not that Marshall's that size, but I do think he's got that to him. So we shall see. But yeah, not a good day for the brand, for the Terrace Marshall hate club. Zach says, I hate to say it, but Jefferson and Addison is probably the better receiving pair than AJ and Smitty, but it's very close. I don't know. I think it's difficult because everyone will immediately go to stats for that. And my immediate takeaway is, well, obviously Addison and Jefferson are going to look better because they don't have Saquon Barkley to take away 50% of those snaps from, or the receptions and the targets sort of thing, I don't know. I think on pure talent, unbiased, I think Justin Jefferson's better than both of them. I don't think Jordan Addison's anywhere close. So I would say the better tandem is Smitty and Brown because they're both 2 top 10 receivers, arguably top 5, top 6. So that's my take on that. But it's debatable. And I think the fact it's debatable also speaks volumes. Birdbrain says, I feel like I'm in the minority, but I'm not mad when a CB is beaten if they're beaten in a position with a wide receiver not trailing by 10 yards behind. Brilliant point. And that's what we saw from Keely Ringo today. The reports were that the catch he gave up to AJ Brown, he had good coverage. Now, I don't know what good coverage means in training camp. I'm not there. There's no video of it, but looked all right, apparently. So, yeah, no immediate red flags on that front. And if we want to bring back the Jaquette Ass Pussy song just for 1 week, I'm sure we'll find a way to do it. But that was an era. I thought he could have been something as well. That was another player I really thought he could have, had an extra layer to him. But alas, just the Jaquette Ass Pussy in the end. Timor says, Terrace Marshall couldn't even make our 53 while we had a wide receiver with a broken leg and a wide receiver with a bullet hole in his chest. I don't know how he's made an NFL 90. Very fair point. Very fair point. I mean, I'm not going to budge on my stance. I think, it's hard when because I'm not on, a massive platform, right? I don't have thousands and thousands of followers, and we don't sit here speaking to millions of people. But I think it's important to be honest when you're wrong and honest when you're right, but not overperforming it. Like, some people just, love to hate on a player, and then it becomes part of the brand, and then they hate the player more and more, even when the player does good, and they just ignore that and continue hating on them. I've never wanted to be that guy. So, if he does well, I'll own it, and I'm happy to own it. But at the same time, there is not a single day I think I've ever thought about Terrace Marshall and thought, wow, I was so wrong. Do you know what I mean? But maybe this is it. There will be no, midnight green tinted glasses here, Timor. If he stinks, he stinks. If he's class, I will say he's a second coming of Megatron, but that's by the by. Duck says, I would prefer the secondary get beat now in training camp and learn to adjust and get their snaps before facing our opponent. Sorry, I've really got to clear my throat. Sound like I've been smoking for 30 years. I promise I haven't. But yeah, also good. It's the first day of camp. You're going to have the occasional mistake. You're going to have people give up receptions. You're going to have receivers drop passes. I mean, Christ, I remember the days of, do you remember the jugs machine era in Philadelphia where every week a different receiver would be hitting the jugs machine? It was Jordan Matthews. It was Nelson Aguilar. It was just this never-ending chain of almost wanting receivers to hit the jugs machine because they just weren't catching anything in the season beforehand. And that went on for 3 years. So we're not at that point anymore, which is great. But yeah, training camp just is that time to develop. It's the time to grow, to try new things. And yeah, I think you're right. I would much rather see corners get toasted here and then be classed in the regular season than a Jalen Reagor, for example, where he had that one catch. Do you remember that one training camp catch? And then just... So I'm very much with you on that one. Hightower's greatest moment is you hyping him up so much that you made someone that didn't watch the NFL draft him in round 1 in a fantasy league. Long live Wahab is what I say. What a man. And to be fair, I promise I'm not trying to be egotistical. I think the most viral moment of John Hightower's career was the moment he was drafted and I lost my absolute mind. And then the clip kind of picked up on Twitter, which isn't a good sign. I want to do an interview with him one day. I want to just sit down and just chat to him and say, did you ever know? Same with Clayton Dawson, Clayton Dawson. I've known someone reached out and said that they went to TCU and that it was something to do with his brother or his sister and they showed them the song. So Clayton is technically aware of the Clayton Dawson song, which all I could ever wish for in life, that he knows that exists. But hopefully we're wrong and Terrace Marshall does something a little bit more worthwhile. I have one phrase for those who doubt Brown and Smith being the best duo. Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. Mic drop. Absolutely agree with that. I think as a complete tandem, like that's the thing. For me, if I'm going to build a receiving tandem, I want two very different receivers, which the Eagles have done so well. Like Smitty is one of a kind. AJ Brown is one of a very, very rare few. I still think Smitty is the most underrated receiver in the NFL. Said that pretty much since he got into the league. And also walk back my comments saying I could beat him in a boxing match. But I do think that AJ is so dominant physically, and you cannot play both receivers the same. Like if you want to sit back and you don't want to let Smitty run at you, good luck trying to click and close on AJ Brown. Like if you want to flip that around, have fun trying to not get your ass beat by Smitty underneath, and then being beaten off the line of scrimmage with sheer force by AJ Brown. It's such a juxtaposition of wide receiver that you have to think twice about everything. And don't get me wrong, Justin Jefferson is that guy, and he can make you do that. Do I feel the same about Addison? Like, not really. He is just a B receiver, which is what he is. And that's not a knock on him. You're always going to be a B receiver to Justin Jefferson. I think there is a difference between an AB combo and an AA combo. And I cannot remember the last time, maybe outside of Julio and Roddy White, where there was a guaranteed AA, where like Julio was the guy and he was great, but Roddy White on his day is just as lethal underneath. And Edelman Amendola, maybe they weren't elite, but in terms of what they provided for that team. So you see what I'm saying? I think like that would be the way I see them. And I'm probably a little bit different in that because a lot of people go to stats and receptions and separations and all of that stuff. But yeah, I think that's where I kind of sit that as an outright duo, you're not going to find better. Like you cannot build a better combination than those two. That same person tried to draft a basketball player too. Yeah, we need to do like a whole PSN documentary on Wahab and his fantasy American sport exploits, because that has been one heck of a ride. I can guarantee you that. I remember when you lost your mind when Hightower was drafted like it was yesterday. I watched it live. I'm glad that that's still with people, because for me, that might honestly be one of my favorite PSN moments of all time. Like I was so excited when they drafted Hightower and it ended horrifically. But for those 30 seconds, there was just this weird feeling that because I was so excited that people thought this guy was actually going to be good. And I'm sorry for misleading so many people. But yeah, I've never had a draft crush on a 5th round guy and watch him go to the team that you cover or the team that you like. I've never had that. Like everyone, you have your 1st round draft crushes or your 2nd round draft crushes, and you get to round 5 and 6, you don't really care. I've never, I rated him better than like some 3rd round players. So to have him on the team was special for the week that he was relevant for sure. Not to downplay that duo, they're an insane duo. I think it helps. It's hard to double team them because of your quarterback and running back. Also very true. Also very true. But then again, like, I don't know. Like, then how do you quantify it? Because do you just take them away because of Saquon? Like, are you saying that if you put them on a team with a random running back, like let's say you just stuck them in Denver or like even Atlanta with Bijan or something, like, are they not going to be as productive? Or if you stuck them with the New York Giants, maybe not the Giants because of the quarterback. Sure. Let's go Washington. We stuck them on Washington instead of McLaurin. Like if you just had those two, I think they'd be just as good. And if you look at the year without Saquon, they put up better numbers. The year without Saquon, they were both like top 5 receivers. So that will be my counterpoint to that. But it's so subjective. I think anything with rankings is so subjective. And that's what makes them fun, because you can just disagree with them till the cows come home. Like you can sit there reading CBS and ESPN and even our rankings or whoever, and subjectively every single one of them is right and every single one of them can be wrong in the same breath, depending on who's reading them. So yeah, I think it's just a lot of fun. But I understand there's definitely a bias here. But yeah, it's difficult. I would personally put them there, but I can also understand why others wouldn't agree. If you want to put Jefferson and Addison there, fair enough. If you want to go elsewhere with that, absolutely fine by me. But for me personally, they're the top. Better than me. My Eagles draft trust is a UDFA Holland Pierce. Hey, but he's on the team. He's on the team, which is more than can be said for John Hightower. So, you're kind of one step ahead on that front. Of course, it'll be less productive, but they might get more plaudits. Yeah, but again, then before Saquon, and it was still they never really got their respect then. I think they weirdly have more respect this year because of Saquon, which is a bizarre thing to say, really. But I mean, Malik's good, but the Giants always seem to have just one fluke receiver. Like they had Sterling Shepard that was class, Odell Beckham that was class, and they can never capitalize on it. So, that just is what it is. But yeah, just to round out the training camp talk though, because I know we still got a couple more other things to go through. I think the only other thing I wanted to touch on was one player who ended up with a sack today, who was Jalix Hunt, purely because I've been a big Jalix Hunt stan for a long time. Like since that first film room we had after the Eagles drafted him, and we were like, oh, I think there's just something about him. There is something about that boy, and I think that he's so quick and he's so agile, and he exploded at the right time for the Eagles. And now in a situation where we don't know if he's going to be used as a fringe linebacker, if he's going to be used purely off the edge. The Eagles, of course, signed Okakonkwo. If I've pronounced that name wrong, I feel so bad. I need to Google it. Hang on. I want to make sure I don't. I think it's Orakonkwo. So it's not showing up. So I've Googled it and it's not showing up. So let me go on. I could just go on my own website. That would be good, wouldn't it? Because since I run it and do it for a job. Hang on. I just want to make sure I don't mess up the name because I have it. Okoronkwo. I was close. Okoronkwo. Anyway, they've signed a veteran from the Browns and he's been on a few teams. But that defensive end group is like a weird spot now where you've got Nolan Smith as this guaranteed home run hitter. And then behind that, it's like Azeez Ojulari, it's Josh Uche, it's now, searching the name again, Okoronkwo, not Okakonkwo, whatever I was saying. And then Jalix Hunt. So if one of those guys goes down, you're in deep trouble, which is why they signed the veteran. Just going to go by his first name as Ogbo because it's far more easier to pronounce. But yeah, I think that for me, Jalix Hunt could absolutely play a key role. He might even end up being the starter opposite Nolan Smith this year, which is kind of crazy to think about, given that he was a small school sleeper out of a school that no one had really ever heard of. Barely got any defensive snaps through the first half of the season and then blew up. And now we're talking about someone that realistically could. I don't think he will. I think it'll be Ojulari, but I think that there is a chance we see him potentially as a starter, if not definitely in that third and fourth pairing. And if not that, as a weak side linebacker or a strong side linebacker, especially if Nakobe's not ready, especially if Jihad's not ready. You have Trot there and you've got Jalix Hunt on the other side. It's a good way to start the year. And he ended up starting camp with a would-be sack on Jalen Hurts, which was music to my ears because he is just a brilliant young player to watch. And I think he's got a very bright future in this league. So I'm very much all for Jalix Hunt stannery and hoping that he continues to turn some heads as training camp goes on and deep into the preseason. Birdbrain was high on Kayvon Wallace. We're fans of Kayvon Wallace at PSN because he gave us a couple interviews and he's a lovely man. He's one of the players I really wish pulled out for Philadelphia. Like he had such an opportunity to really snatch that and become a key cog in that secondary, and it just never panned out. He had all the makings of and the approval of Brian Dawkins. Let's not forget that. Like Brian Dawkins kind of put his name to Kayvon Wallace and didn't pan out. So that one sucked. Like, that was a hard player to admit that might not be what we thought he was, kind of thing, you know. Also, Timor says neither have a passing touchdown in the Super Bowl, so unfortunately, Jawan Jennings clears them both. Fair. Maybe we'll see it in the Super Bowl this year, Timor. Jordan Davis looking like a solid mountain of a man. He looks all muscle. Yeah, I think it was Zach earlier in the stream said that he shed some weight and looks very, very lean. He's going to be a menace. And this is something, you know, just to, because I think you might have missed it, Duck, earlier in the stream. So the first point I kind of made on it was that this is obviously a huge year for him. Like, we know he's had his option picked up, but with big money going to Davis, big money to Carter, to Smith, like, he has to really kind of prove his salt. And I think he's done that as a run defender. He's done that as essentially a nose tackle. But where he gets killed in terms of value is just pass rushing stats. So if he's kind of attacked this from a solo mindset or an agent or a personal coach or even the Eagles themselves to be this just fiend and go, let's just get some pass rushing in your repertoire. Don't just be a human bulldozer. We know we've lost Milton Williams. We don't really have that viable DT3 that we did. So we need you to really get some pass rushing gear under you now and see what you can do. I think that's a really good move for him. Like, it's going to bolster his value tenfold. It might mean he plays his way out of Philadelphia if he can end up registering, like 5-6 sacks on the season. But I think he's great. I think he's already got the explosiveness. As Duck said, he was the one that ran down Josh Allen in that play against Buffalo. That was literally the same game as well that Brian Baldinger was calling him fat, which I think is ridiculous. But yeah, I think he's already proven his soul as a run stopper, as a big, bulky defensive tackle, like the old guard of defensive tackle that would just line up in like a 3-down set with Houston or the Chargers, or even the Ravens used to do it quite a lot, where you just have like a 350-pound behemoth, double team into the edges can eat. It happened really, really strongly this year for him. And the only thing he's missing is just that ability to shed a tackle early, shed a block early, add a couple of pass rushing moves to him and give him a little bit more zip, I think, off the snap, and really make him just go from being this like just wall of human mountain to being the man that can move mountains and sneak under them and sneak to the side of him. Get some penetration to his game, and you have got the most dominant 1-2 punch in football. And you can do that, and the Eagles are much more inclined to pay him, as will every other team in the NFL be. But I think that's it from training camp for day one. So we'll be back on Friday to recap the next couple of days of training camp. I think we're going to have a 6 stream tomorrow night. Flipping the Birds should be back next Tuesday. I think I've been informed by a reliable source, so we'll stay aware for that one. And we'll get cracking. But training camp is back. The Eagles are at the NovaCare Complex. Football is so close. We're not far away from the Hall of Fame game. We're not far away from a season of title defense that, according to Jordan Mailata, is no longer a title defense. It is all about setting the new mission. And I think this is a very young team. It's a very exciting team. And I can't wait for preseason. Like, I'm a fiend for it. I absolutely love preseason tape. And just looking at these underdogs try and make the cut, like, it's so much fun. So we'll lock in. There's plenty of content coming. We've had like 6 or 7 Eagles articles, I think, over the last couple of days on PSN, going over the presses, going over the Terrace Marshall stuff, and of course, going over just the overall training camp sentiment, roster battles, and that stuff. So if you haven't been to phillysportsnetwork.com, make sure you check it out. And until next time, I'll quickly get to Duck's final comment that he thinks Davis will become an Uncle Vic favorite. I like that for a bold take. We'll pencil that in and we'll revisit it at the end of the year to see just how much of a favorite. I want to see pictures of like little back pads and little cuddles here and there. I think I completely agree with that. And sorry, Duck's final comment is that he loves Hurts for not wearing the Super Bowl ring. I've turned over a new year and focused on that. And yeah, he just can't do no wrong, can he? The man can do no wrong. He is just a different breed of human. And I think we can all try and be a little bit more like Jalen in our day-to-day lives. But to be fair, in fairness to him, like, if you'd have given him that ring a week after the Super Bowl, I think he might have worn it, I'd like to think. But you're giving it to him like a week before he reports to training camp. Like, I get it from his perspective. Like, he doesn't want to live in that moment. He's more than that moment. He's Jalen Hurts. He's the leader of this team. And if he's not focused and too busy looking across the locker room going, hey, Smitty, do you remember when you went and we went? Like, something tells me that's just a recipe for complacency and falling off. So he is absolutely right to I say right. I mean, it's personal preference, isn't it? But I completely agree that this is someone that is just so locked in and doesn't care about the materialistic things, doesn't care about rings, just wants to win every single year, no matter how high that mountain is. There's a select few players in history that have had that mentality. You don't need me to name them. And Jalen Hurts just has all of that sauce. And it's incredible, man. Like, I couldn't love him anymore. And then he does something else and you love him infinitely more. It's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. My player to watch, I think the obvious one would be Keely Ringo, because he has to get snaps. Like, this is a roster battle that hasn't been solved yet. He's going to be, rotating around with Adoree Jackson. But that's the obvious one. And as much as I love Keely Ringo and I'm a huge Ringo guy, like I think giving that answer is a bit of a cop out. So the other I think Drew Kendall could be an interesting one, just purely because, you know, he's moved position. How does he look at backup center? Because we know for a fact that Cam Jurgens ain't going to play center in preseason. So how does he look? Is he ready? Are we going to see this Stoutland University kind of moving forward? Smith, obviously, Aeneas Smith, I think draft crush year 2, had a little bit of an impact in year 1, could have been more. But is he ready now to challenge the likes of Jahan Dotson or Terrace Marshall? Can he get in amongst that discussion? I don't think he'll beat any of them out, but can he get in amongst that discussion? That's a personal one. Outside of that, I don't know. I think Ty Robinson. I would go with Ty Robinson or Andrew Makuba. I think both of those rookies. Robinson's in a bit of a weird spot where, again, the Eagles lost Milton Williams. They need to find that DT3 ASAP. And he's got all the makings of just being an absolute rampant monster on the defensive front. And if he can get up to speed quickly and you can get him into some defensive situations, I think he will be a very, very fun player to watch. And then Makuba and the guys at safety, I think, especially with these talks of Coop moving up a bit and potentially filling in some bridged air there for the safety position, we need to see if Makuba's up to snuff. We need to see if he's ready to go. We need to see realistically if Sidney Brown's any good, if he can take a step forward in his development and maybe win that role while Makuba develops a little bit. So those will be my players that I'm keeping an eye on. Aeneas Smith from a personal bias because I love him and I loved his Texas A&M tape. Drew Kendall to see how he looks. Keely Ringo because I'm the biggest Keely Ringo fan. Not ever. I'm sure there's someone on Twitter with a profile picture more than me. But I'm a big Keely Ringo guy. And then obviously the safety spots and Ty Robinson. So to pick any of those, and I'll be locked in like Howie's binoculars, ready to go through it all. And it won't be long until we do. So we need to work out whether we're doing preseason watch-alongs or we're doing the recaps. I'm sure that'll be in a conversation with the new owners of PSM, whenever that will be. So as soon as we know more about the YouTube channel, what we're doing with it, what our plans are, we can obviously let you guys know. But yeah, hopefully some exciting times, and Eagles football's back. So plenty of reasons to be absolutely amped and running around the room with your Eagles jerseys on. So go Birds, enjoy the rest of your Wednesday evenings. And from myself, Liam Jenkins, I will see you next time on another episode of The Outside Insider.